Is it not the case then, O companion, that if this is true, there is great hope when I arrive where I'm going, if indeed anywhere, I shall be there. Possess that which has inspired much diligent study in our past life. Okay, there's something that inspires. So inspires, it sounds like the power. So there is that which is inspired. There's something about this state of being, or phronesis, or truth, that should inspire our work, enliven us, motivate us. Because there's something that gets you off your butt. There's got to be something, some power, some will, something that inspires your will. In our past life. Oh, okay, so his past life is that which has the study. So he's been reborn in a different way. So this experiencing this kind of rebirth from this soul from the body. So he's there. So that journey which has indeed now been mandated to me arises with good hope. So I'm going to die with good hope, which leads those who have prepared their understanding. If you want to die well, with good hope, prepare your understanding, your dianoia. And let's highlight that. And other people, just as if they had been purified. So again, if you want something to do while you're alive, prepare your understanding. It will purify you and lead you to die with good hope, says Socrates. Most certainly, so Socrates. But accordingly, does this purification not turn out to be what we mentioned in the Logos some time ago? 2. Okay, this is the big one. Separate the soul from the body as far as possible. Do that. And to be accustomed. This is the habitual returning. They meet outside the prison every day. We return to this text every day. We return over and over and do the dialectic. To be accustomed to. Gather herself together from all quarters and collect self by self out of the body. Gather herself together from all quarters. Collect self by self. Collect self. Let's just remind ourselves of what Socrates was instructed to do at the start of his life, the start of his philosophical journey. Collect thyself together. Yes. Yes. Trust first. Repeat it often. Believe it. Trust it. You got to trust the Logos. All the way through, he's saying, I trust this to be the case. But then complete it. Pull the stunt off. Be reborn in this way. And then finally come back and do it with share it with other Platonists. Come back as Gandalf, having reached that level.
I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure.
And share it with other adventurers. So collect self by self out of the body. And to dwell alone by self as far as able. Both now and in the future. Being liberated, as it were, from the chains of the body. So our question is, how many parts are there in this? Separate the soul from the body as far as possible. Okay, we need to apply our dialectic to understanding this. Let's start with DDAS. So, we have our dialectic pattern here. Oh, I haven't even read the laws. Interesting. We have our dialectic pattern here. We have self is to self. What can you say about ourself? Another way of saying that is definition. How does that self relate to another? Demonstration. other word. How does that other relate to his friends? Or division? And then how do those others, having been affected by this process, go back to the start? How does it synthesize? And then analyze. Return that synthesis back to the beginning. Synthesis, analysis. Okay, so these are in our 4 skill tree. So the SO is one of those skill trees, and DDAS is a skill tree. So we can bounce them off each other to see what works for this. Fear would be the biggest part. Might get you excited. So, can we use DDAS first to understand this part of the text? Separate the soul as far as possible. Okay, that sounds like a definition if ever I've heard one. Let's try this one. Definition. Separate the soul from the body. The soul from the body as far as possible. As far as possible. Now that brings in a question. All the way through the text has been, oh, dialectic is like playing Dwarf Fortress. I am going to try that game. Please say more. So there's a question, all the way through the text we've been getting the expression as far as possible. Socrates, make the anagogic connection. Anagogic, of course, is a word that means a metaphor, but related to the highest. So anagogic means like, make it a logos myth. So Socrates is, yes, anagogic, is as much of a daemon as he's ever seen. He's going to fare well as ever any man could. Yes, ana, upward, yep. And the expression as far as any man can, or as far as possible, has been repeated. So this stands out, which means that when we separate the soul from the body while we're still alive, maybe we're not completely separated. In spiritual traditions, they talk about a golden cord connecting us. So that when people who do separate their soul from the body, they are able to find their way back, because we're always connected to our body for as long as we're alive. So that sounds like a definition. Be accustomed to gather herself together from all quarters. Is that a demonstration? So demonstration will be a quick example. Defined it. Now what does that mean? Collect itself together from all quarters. Let's see if that's a demonstration. No, because collect yourself together from all quarters, and to collect self by self out of the body, and to dwell alone self by self as far as she is able, both now and the future. The next 4 parts seem to be the division of the elements. So how do you separate the soul? Oh, right. When separated from the body, what takes care of the body? Right, the brain. Right. You're familiar with Plotinus? May I ask what your background is? Like, how long have you been studying Platonic philosophy and what brought you into it? The chat has just quoted The Flight of the Alone to the Alone, which is a great passage from Plotinus. And yeah, alone by the self. Not too interesting. What brought you in? And who have you been learning from? Other than Mindy. Right, so this does this dwell alone by self as far as she is able. That sounds like the quote from Plotinus, the flight of the alone to the alone. Or the wow. I mean, I'm impressed. Yeah, so there's that. But how can we understand this section here? Custom to gather herself together from all quarters. That sounds like step 1. Collect self by self out of the body. Step 2. And then once you're out, to dwell alone by self as far as you are able. 1. Gather yourself together from all quarters. That sounds like the out in the country. Sounds like the sometimes people say feel the tips of your toes and move it up through your body, sort of like guided meditation like that, up through your spine, through the kundalini, the top of your head, and then I think that's the 6th chakra, and then the 7th chakra is just above your head. So that would be where the chakra system, you can do that. Wow. So collecting your consciousness above your head, out of the body. Now, to dwell alone by self might mean don't go on trips. The soul flight, yes. So don't become a what they call a metaphysical tourist. Instead, dwell alone by yourself. Yeah, don't go floating around the room or whatever. Dwell alone by self as far as you're able. So this is the collecting yourself together. Why? Well, we've just gone through this whole explanation of we want to do the logos. We want to do our dialectic without any use of the senses, return to this logos, repeat it over and over again. That's our most ousia-like, or most like the divine, as our preparation for that thing. Right, removing what isn't you, removing that association, like that as though you are your body. So when he said, but what happens is the desires, the urges, the pains, the seeking pleasure of the body comes pouring in to distract you from that. That's why we want to pull off this stunt. We don't want to pull off this stunt so we can fly around the room or whatever. So that might be the significance of this next part. Dwell alone by yourself as far as you're able. And finally, both now and in the future. That's the stay in there. Try and stay in there for as long as you can. So this seems to be a 4-part divisions. Gather yourself from all quarters. Number 1. Number 2, collect the self from the self out of the body. Number 3, dwell alone by self as far as you are able. Number 4, both now and in the future. Oh, I see. This purification here. I think I can make it fit. Sorry, let's jump to the text. Oh, wax or clay that has impressions on it and the shadow showing it. I say itself, but right. Right. That's another metaphor of purification that Plato has, having impressions from clay being put upon us. We want to purify it. Right. And recognize that this body that we normally associate with, and most of our friends at the pub will tell us to associate with and cheer us on when we do, are associating with the shadow yourself casts. And even the memories are like are impressions or bits of dirt and sticks in the clay. We want to get rid of those because we are the clay. We're not those impressions. And we're not the shadow we cast on the wall. That's just our body. That's what we're getting from the chat. It's a great input from the chat. And the block isn't us, but the light that watches. We might not even be the mind. We might not even be the clay, but that which watches the clay. So, that was good. That was insightful. Elevating it to another level. But I'm moving this down here. Why? Because in the text, does this purification not turn out to be what we mentioned in the Logos? So that purification is the definition. We've already mentioned it in the Logos. So the Logos will follow the definition. So I'm doing it this way. Of course, if you see a better way of fitting it in with any of the patterns or triads or quadrads or tetrads that or whatever 5 is, pentads, please share them in the chat. So the definition is the purification. Oops. Purification. That's the definition. And he says, we mentioned it in the Logos already. So he's going to give a summary. Already mentioned. Already. I'm missing a letter. Already mentioned in the Logos. In the Logos? Yes, the Logos, capital T. Already mentioned in the Logos. That's a definition. Demonstration, which is a brief explanation. Demonstration. A brief encapsulation of what will explain what we just defined. Give me a demonstration. What is this purification? Oh, easy. It's to separate the soul from the body as far as possible. Yuck. Demonstration. Now, the cool way of organizing it like this. Always everything and the anything. Interesting. Where does that triad come from? Now, the cool way of separating it like this is you can use it in conversation. That's one fun way of practicing it. Right. My brain makes me like it's the third person. Right. They don't associate with the physical. So, as we went through the Parmenides, we saw that this structure was being followed by Parmenides when talking with Socrates, and then later when he did his hypothesis with Aristotle. He said, by the way, do you get this? Do you know the purification? It's already been mentioned in the Logos. Do you get it already? And then if they say, oh yeah, I get it, then you move on to... Right. And then you move on to the next topic. Oh, by the way, the one self isn't a whole, right? And then if they say, oh no, the very first sentence of the Parmenides. Actually, let's pull it up because we have it here, so why not? So I'm going to pull up the first line of the first hypothesis of Parmenides just as an illustration of the dialectic. And why we're pulling out this section according to the DDAS structure of the dialectic. Why it's worth doing. Okay. And how you can use it if you do it this way. Okay, Jarvis, are you there?
24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Can you please pull up the first hypothesis of the Parmenides?
Importing all preferences from home interface. Systems are now fully operational.
Thank you, Jarvis. Okay, let's go to the start. So, the first hypothesis is Parmenides, the first part of his dialectic. Just to remind us, he said there's going to be basically 3 parts. He's going to be beginning from himself, and then he's going to give a demonstration of his hypothesis of himself, and then he's going to divide it into the other categories. What happens if the one self is, and then if it isn't. So there's 4 if it is, 4 if it isn't, of course. DDAS or SO, S's, SOs, 4 if it is, 4 if it isn't. And then what happens as a result of each of them. So this is his first one, his hypothesis of himself. Before the one that is. This isn't the one that is. It's just a pure one. So on that note, let's read it. Well then, if one is, of course, this is our puzzle. We mentioned it earlier. It's a kind of is that doesn't exist. So it's the big question is what the hell kind of is the one that is. And the end of the hypothesis, he equates it to ousia, and he says it's not ousia. So yeah, it's a big puzzle. It's the big one. If the one is, could not the one be many in some other way? In other words, it can't be many. So it's a strange way of saying it, but that's what it means in English. We take away the negatives. So if the one is, it can't be many in some other way, right? How could it be many? So Aristotle is on board. So he introduced his first duad of terms, like the selfers. A lot of selfers. There are some balloons. There are some selfers that are like individual, like beauty and justice, and then there are some selfers that are pairs. They're duads. Normally they refer to like the one because it's understanding, whereas beauty and justice are more desires, so that lower part of the soul. So one and many is the first one. They're a pair. They go together. They complement each other. But they have their existence. There's the one that exists, and there's the many that exist. And in being, they're self terms, selfers. The next one is whole and part, another pair of terms that have their own existence and being. So, one and many, he says, if one is, it can't be many. That's just the definition. Aristotle says, how could it be many? I'm with you. You don't have to divide it up any further. You don't have to go further into the dialectic. The definition suffices. Next one. Accordingly then, neither can any part belong to self, nor can self be a whole. Definition. Why not? He doesn't get it. He has to then divide it up into its arguments to show him. Because a part is in some way part of a whole. Yes. What about the whole? Would not that from which no part be absence be whole? So he's defining what part is and whole is. Accordingly then, from both these consequences, the one would be composed of parts. By being a whole, which we've defined as having all its parts and no part absent, and by possessing parts. Parts are already part of a whole, necessarily. Accordingly then, in both ways, the one will be many and not one. True. But it must be not many. We just said that. The first thing that you agreed to was it's not many. But one self. It must be. Hence then, it will neither be a whole nor possess parts if the one is to be one. Okay? So that was, he started with a definition and he was on board. So he went on to the next one. And then he said, can it be a part or a whole? I don't know. Then he had to divide it up into its arguments. And there are some times when he can, when he says, why not? Maybe the next one. And he gives a simple demonstration. He doesn't have to divide it up into its arguments. Oh, here we go, here. Accordingly then. Okay, so after this, he says, accordingly then it must be without shape or form, for it can neither participate in the circular or the rectangular. So that is a demonstration. The definition is it can be without form or shape. Because, yeah, I'm with you, of course not. But he gives a quick explanation because to have a shape is to participate in the circular or straight. Then he has to go on and define circular and straight and saying, well, straight has parts because there's an ends to it and the middle is in between. And a circle has extremes as well. So those are all parts and they're all equidistant. That's what makes it circular. And every shape is either straight or circular or some combination. But if he had already given us the fact that it can't have circular or straight, if that was already given, then, okay, form is tricky because often the word idea, which means to behold the ousia, is translated as form. It's like a bad English word, so you've got to be careful with form. But yeah, maybe even the ousias have some sort of substance, some shape to it. But if he had already defined the circular and the straight, he could have just said this. Accordingly, then it must be without shape. Definition. And then Aristotle could have said, why? Demonstration. Oh, because it has to participate in circular or straight. That's a quick explanation. But then he goes, why is it not the case? And then you got to explain it. Okay, so this is the significance. So at the first argument, he could just give a definition and that was sufficient. He didn't have to explain it at all. So that's why we're doing this. We're taking this, we're seeing the parts. He's saying, hey, by the way, it's the purification definition. It's already been mentioned. Was that enough? Do you have it already? No. Okay, then give a demonstration, give a succinct explanation of that definition. Demonstration, to separate the soul from the body as far as possible. Oh yeah, I get it. You've said enough for me to follow. I'm with you. Let's take the next step in our dialectic, the next step in the logos, the next step in our conversation towards the truth. Okay? But that might not be enough if this idea is unfamiliar to someone. Separate the soul from the body as far as possible. What?
What?
What is that?
What?
Ah. What would this look like to me in a year of study? That's a good question. If you keep returning to this and you make lots of dialectics for yourself, it's only been 3 or 4 months. Wow, that's impressive. Well, I recommend exercising yourself as much as you can in this, but you'll be way ahead of me. I mean, that doesn't mean anything. Also, Mindy's book is awesome too. Division. What is division? Divide it up into its elements, its key ideas, its themes, or if it's in a conversation like this where we're explaining an idea, it's ordered arguments. That's division. I cannot recommend highly enough reading the Balboas as much as you can. There are so many key, there are so many, the division is not good. There are so many key ideas that are missed from non-Balboa texts. And without them, you can't follow the steps of the argument. They might sound a bit wacky because the previous translators haven't gone through this activity of purifying themselves from their past mythologies. A lot of translators are heavily influenced by the society and by Christianity specifically, and by the Latin tradition, and by Aristotle as well, which is like the opposite in a lot of ways to this. The physical world, right? Stoicism or materialism. So I recommend diving into the Balboa. Also, I recommend Mindy's book. It's pretty awesome. I think Discovering the Beauty of Wisdom. So, division, divided up into its arguments. So that's what we're on to now. So let's bring up the text. Are you there to help me?
I'm here to assist you with a variety of tasks as best I can.
Can you please pull up the Phaedo that we're on?
Importing all preferences from home interface.
Thank you, Jarvis.
Systems are now fully operational.
So, definition, purification. We've mentioned it in the logo some time ago. Do you have it already? No. It is to separate the soul as far as possible. Okay, that's a good demonstration. To be a good cynic is to be a good dog. Right, who doesn't love dogs? They are loyal to a fault. So this is a good demonstration. Now, give me the divisions. Number 1, to be accustomed to gather herself from all quarters. That sounds like an opening point. That sounds like the start. Like, you can't separate the soul from the body as far as possible unless you first gather yourself from all quarters of your body. So that lets me know that we're onto the division stage. Number 2, collect self by self out of the body. Number 3, dwell alone by self as far as she is able. Number 4, both now and in the future. Okay? This also indicates that this might be the structure here because it's a 4. 4 is key to philosophy and key to the dialectic. Often in the division step, you see a definition, demonstration, division, analysis. The 4 parts of the dialectic you often see within the division part itself. Like we just read the Parmenides, and he had to give the division of whole and part because Aristotle couldn't see it with a simple definition. It can't be whole or part. It's like, why? Okay, here's the division. First, I'm going to define what a whole is, and I'm going to define what a part is. So definition was the first step of his division, right? So you see the whole and the part. It's very fractal like that, or holographic like that. The part and the whole, and so on. So there are 4 parts here. That also is a indication that it might be the way it's structured. So let's write that out. Let's nail it down so we have it. Number 1, gather together, gather the soul. Let's gather soul together. Together from all quarters. From all Quarters. From all quarters. Number 2, collect self by self. Collect. Yes. Contemplation and withdrawing. That is a gathering. Collect self by self. Out of body. Out of the body. Number 3, dwell alone by self. Dwell there. You'll do well to dwell. You'll do well to dwell alone. Dwell alone by self. By self as far as she is able. As far as self is able. Far as able. For both now and in the future. Oops. both now. Again, the idea of now, present. This has been a repeating theme. Were you present with Socrates, Phaedo? What are you doing with your time in the present? Do you have time to reflect on in detail about what happened? Who else was present? Were the Athenians present? Was Plato present? What should we do with our present before the sun sets? Present has been a repeating theme all the way through, so that should stand out, both now and in the future. Also, if everything we're talking about is the present, this is something that we do both now in our lifetime and in the future, in our next life. Do you want to reincarnate, or do you want to dwell out of the body, alone by self, in the future? Both now and in the future. Could this be a way of escaping from the cycles of reincarnation? UTURE. By the way, if you identify with this self out of the body and your practice to not falling into the body, would that help? If reincarnation is falling again into the body, what was the expression we saw before? We saw it pours in, it clamours in. What's the expression? Yes, it falls, the body falls in a clamour pouring in, and it drives us out of our mind. Well, if we end up out of our body in death in the state of pure mind, do we want to fall into a reincarnation, into a clamour of the ignorance that comes with being a human? Or are we doing this both now in our current incarnation and in the future, all the time? Are we doing it as a habit? To accustom, where was the word accustom? We're to accustom ourselves to. Yes. This is an accustom. So let's move this down and keep the word accustom. This idea of meeting every day, doing this as much as possible. Whoops. Okay. Philosophy is a way of life. Easy to do if our body wasn't coming in and annoying us and telling us to do something else. We can accustom ourselves. Let's keep that. ACC US custom. Custom. Ourselves to yes. It's like in a dream where you fully detach from the body and you are something else. Right. But the significance of the dream is there is something about that image in your dream that is so like what you are accustoming yourself to relate to that you get wrapped up and you don't realize that's not you. You have left your body, but the image presented to you is something you're accustomed to identifying yourself as, and therefore you get wrapped up in the drama. The body pours in with its drama and its calamities and its fears and desires that play out in the dream. Therefore, you can understand dreams as a message about this, about what you're accustoming yourself to do. The drama is the demonstration and the division, the implications and the narrative, the mythology that unfolds from what you're defining yourself as in the dream. Therefore, you can use the dream to gain information about yourself, your false identity, about what you're defining yourself as, because the dream is just the dialectic on that. Now, what's interesting is dream analysis follows the dialectic itself. What is the definition of the problem in the drama? Or what is the self-image at the start? What is the opening of the dream? Okay, how does it demonstrate itself? How do you function in the dream? What's the drama that unfolds? What are the parts? And therefore, at the end, synthesis analysis, do you reach your goal at the beginning or not? If not, what was the problem? Again, and then once you've done that, you can identify the problem. Define the problem. How does the problem demonstrate itself? What are the aspects, the divisions? What are the key elements of the problem? And then how can you use that? What key term of those divisions helps you understand the problem? What is the state of mind? Then once you've got the state of mind that was a problem, you can do the same thing again. Define that state of mind. How does it demonstrate itself in your dream and in your current life? How does it divide itself through your life? How does that state of mind have a history? And what's the earliest part of those divisions? And what do? We pull that earliest part and it becomes back to the start again, ousia. That earliest scene where you first demonstrated that state of mind becomes the definition of the next part of the dream analysis. What was happening in that scene? Who were the people functioning in that early scene where you first learned that state of mind? How do they look? How do they demonstrate themselves? Did they look beautiful? Did they look knowing? All of those qualities, beautiful, knowing, good, just, these were the exact same things that we are trying to reach in this experience. So we see our early scene where we first got our problematic self-identity is this, only it was the image on the shadows of the cave. So even at a young age, we were seeking this thing that Socrates is laying out for us, only the image of a beautiful, knowing, good, just person became our object of meditation, became our object of contemplation for our whole lives. So we were diverted down the pathologos or anti-logos path when our soul wants to go this other way. Fortunately, we're not content with this usurping, and our dreams remind us, hey, you're getting into the Phaedo, that's great, but I'm not going to let you move on until you first address this guy, because this early scene, the early image of beauty and knowing and goodness is going to get in the way of your study and your experience of the beautiful, the good, the just that you are doing, that you are trying to understand and prepare yourself for and purify yourself for in the Phaedo. So the dream is doing this about your problems and also your goals. To understand your dream is to apply the dialectic to the dreams. That applies the logos in self-reflection. There you have the logos, you have self-reflection or ousia, and that allows you to unpack providence. Just like right now, we are using the logos and the dialectic, plus the dialectic. We are reflecting on the text of Socrates, and we are getting providence from him and the divine. That gives us benefit. So that in this way, we can see that the logos and the dialectic applied with self-reflection or ousia unpacks providence both for our highest goals, which we're doing in Socrates, and applied to our dreams will help us realize that false definition that is not this which we're accustomed to in this exercise. So the same logos and dialectic can be applied to both reaching our highest goals. That's called destiny. And it can also be applied to our problems. Where do we go following our problems? We're on a train track to our inevitable cycles of failure that prevent us from this. That's called fate. So that's how the same dialectic can be applied to the logos or the anti-logos or pathologos to either perfect ourselves, let's write this down, to either the same logos and dialectic, what we call dianoia, understanding, can be applied to reaching our destiny, or escaping our fate. And in the middle, we have dreams that help us for both. And in this text, Socrates said he is writing a mythology about everything he's learnt because the dreams have told him. Let's pull that up in the text. I was trying to find the meaning of certain dreams and atoning the repeated commands of the muses, so our muses and our dreams communicate to us and to Socrates, and he follows the commands. He considers that a guiding ruler. It commands him. The reoccurring dream was commanding me, and I was acting in obedience. He later goes on to say, we can't kill ourselves. I don't mean that, because I don't mean separate like finally, because we are living in service of the gods who are the best overseers of the real beings and watching over ourselves. So if we are in the service of the gods who are watching over us and commanding us, that's who we're obeying. And as Socrates is saying, by the way, who do I listen to commands from? My dreams. So if he's saying that the gods are the best overseers and they watch over ourselves and they watch over the real beings, so there is a kind of God. Let's write it down. There is a kind of God. The kind of God that oversees the beings and us. And it is the best overseer watching over it is the best overseer. How do you spell overseer? Or just E-E-R. Overseer and is watching over. Watching over what? Selves. Ourself. So if that's the model he's giving us, and Socrates is accepting commands from a god that is beyond even being, through dreams. Big one. And we could only have caught this if we were doing this. And if the question came up from the chat. Seeing we had a question from the chat. The go, bove, the go. What does that mean? The god above the god, yes. This is usually called the god or the demiurgos or the divine. Or the demiurgos because it's the creator god. So it creates... Let's write that down. The being is the... demiurge, which is creates... but using intelligence and a model and all that sort of thing, or the divine, or the gods. So that's another question in philosophy. If this is what creates divinely, what the heck is this kind of creation? And the word given is overflow, like a shadow. You don't consciously create your shadow, but you would consciously create this mythology or your work of art. So that's the difference, or the scent of a flower. That's kind of the metaphors used to describe this. A shadow or a scent of a flower or some sort of automatic emanation from its overflowing of brilliance. Whereas this is the creator. But the question is, does this communicate through that? That's a question. So we'll take that exclamation mark and add some question marks. Is it through dreams? Like a reflection? Yes, like a reflection on a water, I guess. In fact, every level of emanation is talked about as a reflection because as if you look at your reflection in the mirror, you go from 3D to 2D, and your 2D image is fundamentally flawed. Left is right. Your left hand, your right hand goes up, so it's fundamentally wrong. Also, you lose fundamental aspects of yourself, like your mirror image doesn't have intelligence. Your mirror image doesn't have will, doesn't have understanding. These are vital, but they're only in the three-dimensional world. So you wouldn't say that the second dimension is evil. Right, it's imitation, right. But it's fundamentally wrong. It lacks all the most important things. But if that's our 3D world, imagine what our 4D world is like. If we are a shadow or a reflection of the 4D world, and we do have intelligence and will and understanding, what the heck is going on in the fourth dimension? And apparently there's a fifth and a sixth. What the heck kind of party are they having? Well, what the hell kind of party are they having? Actually, I should be writing this more accurately because this isn't just quick. This is actually really cool. Good stuff. Let's write it down. So we have the 3D reflect into the 2D. And it's fundamentally not neater than that. It's fundamentally wrong, as in left and right, left and right, switched. It's lacks intelligence, will, mind, understanding. It lacks a dimension. It's 2D. Like a picture without talking about flow state, getting the right state of mind and then flow. Being done. Right. Right. Can you have this dialogue with yourself? Yes. Audiating in music. But also, can you be having that conversation with your dreams? But what about random thoughts? In the Orange Book, what's it called? Philosophical Midwifery, A New Paradigm for Understanding Human Problems by Dr. Pierre Grimes. He talks about even our everyday thoughts and images have this. So we talked about this, what we accustom ourselves to think of ourselves as, our definition of ourself reflects into demonstration of random thoughts and fantasies fantasies that distract us from our goals, our meaningful goals. So, yes, night dreams and daydreams. Daydreams are the awakening dreams, yes. So we talked about how our dreams arise from a false definition of ourselves and then play itself out in its drama. And then we apply that same dialectic that's being used in the creating of the dream to returning. So there's the emanation and reversion. So that's the emanation through the dialectic, but we can also return, reversion through dialectic. So we see the logos and the dialectic is responsible for both our emanation and our return. So we apply this to our random daydreams, our distractions, or our dreams. Our dreams give us more content to solve the puzzle. So both work together. Our dreams can often highlight our, also highlight the true definition of the self. So dreams can go both ways. The dreams can go both ways. It can talk about your true destiny and your fate, whereas our daydreams usually only reflect our fate. Why? Because by being a daydream necessarily, it is a distraction. It's not real. It's a fantasy. And how does it function? It functions to where's our dialectic on the self? It functions to fall in, presents itself in a clamor. It pours in, drives us out of our mind, and we are not able to behold the truth. Our daydreams. Right. Right, yes. It makes you hungry. It makes you tired. It makes you distracted. It makes you want to do something else. That's the nature of our distracting random thoughts and fantasies. Dreams will work both ways, but it works in conjunction. Why? Well, if dreams are helping you by letting you know what your false definition of yourself is, then your daydreams keep that alive. Your daydreams and fantasies keep alive your false definition of yourself. Why? To keep alive your puzzle. There was a puzzle like earlier in the chat. It was I was never given a good definition of the dialectic or the logos. And I was like, yeah, me too. Still working on it. Why? Keep the question alive. That's the koan. That gives you an object of meditation. So your daydreams, your random distracting thoughts and fantasies, keep alive your koan. Your koan about your problem. What's your problem? Nothing other than your false identity with the self. Perhaps the reason you were incarnated in the first place. A false idea of the self. Which means it works in conjunction with your dreams, which play out that in the dialectic, in the drama, in the logos and actions and drama that unfold from your definition of yourself. So both can be applied. You can apply the dialectic to both. That's the reversion. Every random thought that comes up. Apply the dialectic. What was the first image? How far back into that random thought can you go? What was the image that unfolded this fantasy that I played out before I realized, hang on a second, I'm not at the store arguing with Betty about the price of chips. That was a whole fantasy that I went on. Who was the me that started? Who was the me that stars in that random thought? Just like, as it was said in the chat, when we're dreaming, we're not in our physical body, but there's an image of me that I'm so attached to, so accustomed to defining myself by, that I get wrapped up and all of the problems pour in, clamor in, when I could be contemplating the nature of reality separated from my body in dreams. What's one of the ways you can have a mystical experience? In dreams. So, through dreams, random thoughts, and fantasies, we are constantly, and the logos of this text, we are constantly being communicated to in a way where we are communicating from the God that is beyond being, who is the best overseer watching over ourselves through dreams. We can add, therefore, from our reflection, we can add plus, different color though. Let's go this one. No, this one. Plus random, distracting, messy, random, distracting thoughts and fantasies. A lot of energy in fantasies. Constantly communicating to us for our benefit. So our question was, what is the daemon? Well, maybe this is some ways it communicates, but we've recognized that both the way it's emanated or the way it's being communicated and our way of understanding them, reverting back, reversion, is, which by the way, the reversion allows us to gain the benefit, unpack it. Therefore, the reversion comes to, so both the emanation and the reversion. There's emanation. And the reversion both go through the logos. So we say emanation and reversion via logos and dialectic. Therefore, applying the logos to the reversion unlocks. Let's move this down. So this unlocks providence. What's providence? The communication from the God that is beyond being, that is the best overseer, watching over selves, communicates to us at all times through dreams, random distracting thoughts and fantasies, and the logos of Parmenides and logos of Socrates, plus logos of Socrates. Thankfully, we have the Balboa, so we can share in it. Socrates, just like Phaedo always met up before. Wow, one thing is that it makes me so hungry. Yes, my mum had a dream of me before I was born. Oh, right. Right, yes. Shows us things in dreams. Right, so omens. Yes, so that's right. Like through dreams, we can be communicated this providence, both providence that will help us both now and in the future. Right, so that's called omens. Sometimes it's called prophecy. There are prophecy dreams. So dreams have that both now and the future. In fact, it does all of time. Why? Well, it communicates. Where should we put this? So it communicates. That side was getting a bit messy. It communicates about our problems or false self accustomed identity. present. Gives us clues to unlock its cause in the past, and also will direct us towards the either the fate that we will play out if we do not purify ourselves, or the destiny that we will reach in our future. So we say these are the 4 kinds of dreams. Prophecy, reminder, pathologos. So the pathologos is the name for the origin, the fundamental false beliefs that we gain from the past. The reminder is something happening in our present, which could be positive or negative. Prophecy as well could be positive or negative, our fate or our destiny. But also we can get so that's a triad. There's a triad of kinds of dreams. So dreams. We have maybe future at the top. Maybe present would be the activity. Maybe the power, we're powered by our past and we want to reach the future. And it has special names. Prophecy, dreams, pathologos. Yes. You have prophecy dreams before they happen. Absolutely. So a self in the past can be angry with the current self in the future and attack them. Right. Yes. So, you could say our pathologos, our false identity of the self that we have been accustomed to identify with from our from the key origin scene, where our initiation experience, what appeared to be a soul out of body experience, what appeared to be beauty itself, what appeared to be justice itself, but was a parental figure or a surrogate parental figure who appeared to be showing their higher self. That's where we got our spiritual initiation from. So you could say it's this vice or our problems is nothing other than a reflection. Where is it? A reflection. Reflection from the 4D world into the 3D world. We have the 4D world reflecting into the 3D world. Fundamentally, it's a wind egg. Absolutely, a wind egg. The wind egg is what a fancy word for fart. That Socrates says he helps people get rid of through his midwifery process. But we go back to the scene, we can see this reflection process. Fundamentally, when the teacher appeared to be beauty itself, it was full of farce. It lacked intelligence of beauty itself. It lacked the will, the mind, the understanding. It lacked all of the qualities of the 4D experience of self-being. Self-being, justice, beauty, goodness. So this distortion is the cause of our problem. And it's the cause of our identity because our everyday random thoughts keep bringing it up to us. So we keep identifying, we keep accustoming ourselves to do the opposite of this. He is saying, accustom yourself to do the opposite. Purify yourself from that ignorance, from that association with that image and your body. All right? And this is the method of doing it. But we can say the exact same thing is happening This is a spiritual initiation experience into the realm of being. The exact same thing happened, only its reflected form that lacks will, that lacks intelligence, that lacks beauty, lacks all of the things, but had the appearance, the imitation of them, to cause our problem in the past. So in the chat, they were saying our past is kind of conflicting against our present. Exactly. And our dreams can give both. So these are the three kinds of dreams. Of course, we recognize that there is a kind of structure in the logos. Let's go back to up here. We recognize that of the virtues, where's the virtues? Here. There was a triad of virtues, temperance, courage, and wisdom. But above them, so that's our three triad, above them was justice, which is in all of them. But also, when you have all of them, you give birth to justice. So it's in all, but it also leads to all. There's our emanation reversion structure of the logos, even in the virtues. That's the thing about the logos. It's in everything. That's why we're applying the dialectic to reading the text here. Yes, you abort the bad ideas because everyone loves their children. Absolutely. That's the difficulty. Only a certain class of person has the virtue, has the courage, has the wisdom, and has the even-temperedness to allow themselves to get rid of this wind egg, get rid of this false belief. Why? Because they love it. They're attached to it. And also the person who taught it to them appeared to be most beautiful. So they're not willing to give up their false ignorances, their wind eggs, their farts of intelligence, will, mind, understanding, beauty, justice, goodness, and so on and so on and so on. It requires those virtues to go through. It's difficult. It has the greatest force. It has an even greater force than this experience. Why? Because there are people who've had this experience that we're outlining. The gathering of themselves together from all quarters to collect themselves out of the body, to dwell alone by self as far as possible, both now and in the future. They have had that separation of the self from the body, but give them a day or two and they're back into this crap. They're into their problems. They're into their false identification with the self that plays out, demonstrates itself in its random thoughts and fantasies, but also in its everyday life problems that propels people towards their fate. That's why it's even more... Right, the false beliefs are in the human condition are even more powerful than enlightenment. That's fascinating, which is why dreams are usually these kind. They're usually about our pathologos. Like 90% of dreams are about our pathologos because it's so significant to address, because it's even more powerful than this. It will do both, by the way. It has all these sorts of dreams. So you need these virtues to even go through this process. You need to have the wisdom that it's a good thing to do. You have to have the courage to hold on to it, to trust the process, to trust the logos, even though every part of your body is saying, no, my mum was a saint and what she told me was brilliant, and I'll say my dad can beat up your dad and all that sort of stuff. You know, like the joke, if you want to insult someone, make a yo mama joke. Everyone thinks their mother is the best. It's a universal human, it's not personal. It's a universal trait because the image of this thing is even more powerful than the thing itself because of where we were as a child and in the significance of that moment. So you need courage to go through getting rid of your false beliefs and to keep an even temper because everything will try and fight against you doing it. Hey, don't do it. This person's an idiot. What does he know? You need to keep you cool. You have to be tempered. You also have the wisdom to understand the logos of why it's true. The logos is the virtue of the wisdom, part of your soul. And so we notice a triad goes in our 3-skill tree, but we notice that there's a monad above, justice, which gives you a 4-part system. Triad with one above it is a quadrad. So that goes into our 4-skill tree. But we have this question, what is phronesis? Because Socrates is saying, look, all this separating from the soul business that I'm encouraging you to tell my friend Euvenos to do, only if he's already got these virtues. If he has developed sophrosoon, which is a word that can mean all 4 of these virtues, if he's developed this because he's been practicing philosophy, which is our life's work in the best way, so there's our triad there. If he's been doing that, he will follow me. Why? Because because only in this separation of the body can you turn these virtues that we do through discipline and effort and returning again and again, repeatedly collecting ourselves together. Can you turn that into this, which is the virtue that we love above all? We are philophronesis people, really. So we can recognize in here a triad with a monad giving us a 4, but also with this special phronesis one, which is our big question, we have a 5. This is one of our first quadrads that we have developed and added to our skill tree and leveled up. Right. So why am I talking about that? Well, what's the point of having skill trees? You layer them on each other to gain more insight into other things. So let's do that. We recognize that there are 3 kinds of dreams. Dreams of the future, which are prophecy dreams, dreams about our problems in our past, the most common, the pathologos, and reminders about our present. Hey, this is a problem you're facing now, or maybe you haven't realized. Often these are positive. Usually these are positive ones. Like, hey, you're actually all right. Like, you're doing okay. Don't put yourself down, reminding you of what you've done so far. Especially if you're into this game, you gotta recognize that it's not everyone gets into this game. So if you're in this game, you're already ahead of the game. You're already ahead of the pack. So don't put yourself down. But if that's a triad, we got to ask the question, what's the monad? What would be the monad on top that would turn this triad into a four-piece meal? Well, there's another kind of dream called insight dreams or enlightenment dreams. Insight or enlightenment. Enlightenment dreams. You can have this experience that we're talking about of separating the soul in dreams. Understanding how we got there, be patient with them. They're saying wrong things, and the courage to say the right things. Yes, understanding, patience, and courage, the 3 virtues. Yes. Wisdom will follow the easy path. Right. So when you have aligned yourself to wisdom in that way, and you are able to see the paradigm of the logos through the dialectic, there's an expression, a master butcher never has to sharpen his knife. So if you can see, the master butcher can understand how everything fits together, the muscles and the sinews and the connections, so he can use his knife perfectly with the grain of the meat so it never gets dull. That would be the flow state or the easiest path when you have aligned your soul to wisdom, while also recognizing that this is your intended function, so you do this all the time. So that would be the easiest path. In the chat, Socrates is more Christ than Christ. There's actually a fantastic book that's only just been released in the last couple of months. Jesus and Socrates, A Dialogue in Heaven. It is fantastic. It's one of the best things I've ever read. It's amazing. It's so well written. So well written. It's by Pierre Grimes, of course. I thoroughly recommend this book. In fact, in the stream, we might read it sometime. Like maybe after we finish the Phaedo, we'll read that book. It's fantastic. So yeah, I recommend that book. Get that book and Mindy's book. Mindy Mendel, Discovering the Beauty of Wisdom, and Pierre Grimes, Plato, Socrates and Jesus, A Dialogue in Heaven. Hit a dog, make it worse. Vet makes it better. To harm a human makes them worse. Doctor, better. Right, we benefit by being benefit. In fact, we saw in this text, we saw through likeness, we are purifying ourselves to be more like, by being more like the divine. He said, oh, we're going way back. Where we were here was this activity of separating ourselves purifies us. Why? Because purification purifies. Where was it? Yes, if we want to enter a pure state, we have to be liberated from the body so we can behold the self-realities. Why? We have to be pure. Why? Where is it? Right. Because we are to be such a kind. It is lawful for that which is pure to attain that which is pure. It is not lawful for that which is not lawful, right? So you benefit a dog. You make a dog better by benefiting it. So if you understand the benefit, by being a beneficial nature, by overflowing in that beneficial way, you will benefit others. You don't benefit by doing harm. You don't make things cold by being hot. So it's likeness. Right, so good point. And so we have a question. Can we see the 3 skill tree, the 3, the 4, and the 5, the 3, the 4, and the 5 in dreams? You've got the 3, past, present, and future, the reminder dream, the pathologos dream, and the prophecy dream. We've got this 4, the insight or enlightenment dream. We've got 3, the 4, and our question is, what is the 5? What kind of dream would reflect phronesis like? Don't know. I don't know what that is, but that's a question. I've seen these dreams a lot. I've seen these dreams a lot. I have always wondered what this 5th kind of dream is. I know it's there because the person who developed dream analysis says there's a 5th. He hasn't let it out yet. He's holding on to that one. So in that way, we can see the triad, quadrad, and pentad skill trees in dreams, which of course reflect the dialectic. Why? Because each of these has a true, false, and both true and false. There's our 3, there's our 4, and of course we have the first hypothesis of the 5th, which we can add to everything as well if we want to elevate it from the realm of being, which Socrates is at now, to the realm of the one self. So there's our 3, 4, and 5. But that's we're reflecting it. We're reflecting the logos and the patterns. So, and all the way through is the logos and the dialectic. That's how we unlock providence. Now, this is interesting because we have a bunch of questions from our opening. We read carefully through the opening and we have some questions. What is destiny? He mentioned destiny. He also mentioned providence. Yes, what is providence? Question 23. So we have some hypotheses, some ifs to add into our if sac that relate to this question 23 from our reflection. So I hope that was a fun little digression. So let's nail down this dialectic on the self. Dialectic on the self. Wow. Dialectic on the method of separating the self from the body. Accordingly then, this purification definition turns out to be what we mentioned in the logos a long time ago. I often take out the knots. That's a technique you can do to give, the author does, to give us, like to make us an active participant. So it's not like this is a quest. This is like a video game before video games. So he'll say, it's not this. So that's a little something you can do. Just turn it around, say it in the positive. This purification not turn out to be. So yeah, it is. So take out the not. We mentioned in the logos some times ago. Okay, so it's already been defined, but let's outline it. To separate the soul from the body as far as possible. Demonstration. A quick demonstration of what you're defining. The purification. Steps. Number 1, to be accustomed to gather yourself together from all quarters. From the tips of your toes to the top of your head. Well, you're going to have to get to love riddles because philosophy is all riddles. It's the best kind. It's the riddle we're here to solve. We come in with something wrong, like an ignorance of the self. We know it, we have it, but we get given a puzzle from childhood. That's why there's the removing of the fate, removing of the anti-logos. You got to solve that puzzle, but also the puzzle of what does it mean to know thyself? Why are we here? Two big puzzles. Right, so this is the significance of, this is what makes philosophy the best kind of puzzle. It is solvable, fundamentally, without it being solved. And you can do a dialectic on this. Prove to yourself that the puzzles of life must be solvable. Do a dialectic on justice in relation to problems. Habit is part of it, yes. Discipline, like playing the game. You can be habitually drawn off into your false identification, or practice this. So it is important to prove that it's verifiable. First of all, through the logos, through understanding, and you could do a dialectic exercise on this. Would the world be just if our puzzles were not inherently solvable, rational, understandable, and confirmable, knowable? What would follow if they are? What would follow if they're not? So that's a fun dialectic to do. I think the opening line of the Orange text, the Orange Sutra, philosophical midwifery text, it is entirely verifiable that we live in an intelligible universe. Verification is a kind of proof. No, what's the length of? That we live in a... I should have memorized this quote. Embarrassing myself. It is entirely possible to verify for oneself that we live in an intelligible universe. Here we go. It is entirely possible to verify for oneself that we are part of a caring and intelligible universe. Should nail this down. The verification is a kind of proof, since it is a way of understanding that is based upon a realization that our mind constantly communicates with us and for our benefit. That's what we went through just before. Through the logos, it does so. The communications from the mind are as profound as they are utterly appropriate to our circumstance. Actually, I might bring this up so we can read it together. Right. In the chat, found Pierre Grimes first by being interested in paganism. Right. But not fluffy bunny stuff. Right. That's a huge appeal of Pierre Grimes. It's an understanding of the mystical without it being fluffy bunny or airy fairy or woo woo or whatever you want to call it. In other words, it's rational, understandable. In fact, not only is his approach to mysticism, from my experience, the highest, in that he's able to document and talk about every spiritual system. He doesn't have to exclude any. But also his use of the reason is the highest I've ever seen. His logos, his understanding. So it's the least fluffy bunny. Right. Yeah. So that's Socrates too, right? It's the highest use of reasoning, most careful use of reasoning, with the highest level of integrity focused on our highest goal. So it's the highest use of reasoning, but also in doing that, it awakens our highest mystical experiences, the truth of the self and the soul and the destiny of man. So you don't exclude anything. It's all encompassing, the highest use of reasoning and the highest use of spirituality. So here, it's entirely possible to verify for oneself that we are part of a caring and intelligible universe. Thank goodness. The verification is a kind of proof, since it is a way of understanding logos that is based upon a realization. So something you realize yourself. It's an insight that our mind constantly communicates with us We outline many ways in which it does that in here. In our reflection, we saw through dreams, through distractions and random thoughts and fantasies, emanates through the dialectic, but we can revert back through it so it's solvable, understandable. But also we're practicing the dialectic when we do it, both for our dreams and our random thoughts. There we go. It's the best overseer, and we gain benefit through providence by applying the logos and dialectic to it. So we had a little foray into understanding and insights there. Right. That's it. This is in the chat, both weird and familiar. Absolutely. That's a good way of saying it. There's something that reminding us, something that's familiar, like something very weird, very different than anything that I normally hear from family and friends and dudes at the pub, but very familiar, like it's reality is also. Right, one of the characteristics of people who do realize this is, oh, how could I have forgotten? So obvious. That's what we're doing. We're making the obvious to us. So the mind constantly communicates with us and for our benefit, as we've been talking about. The communication from the mind are as profound. As profound. The communications from the mind are as profound as they are utterly appropriate to our circumstance. Talked about that too with dreams. But while the scope of the mind is pervasive, its precision is always directed to what is personally significant. These questions we're giving birth to are ours. They're personally significant riddles. They're not fluffy bunny or woo-woo or, coated in mysterious koans. It's personally significant. You are interested in you. You are interested in your problems. Your problems bug you. You want to get rid of them. You're also interested in your most personally meaningful goals. We will demonstrate that our choice of goals, the problems we face, the daydreams or fantasies we have, and the dreams that visit us in our sleep, each and every one of them are like doorways into the richest sources of insights into our life. Sounds like what we were talking about just before. We missed the choice of goals. We talked about the problems, the daydreams and the fantasies, but we need to add into this our choice of goals. So, distract us from our meaningful goals, but we needed to add also diminish our choice of goals. I'm going to add that one in there too. So, while we are accustoming ourselves to do this, to separate ourselves from our false identification with the body and our false identification of the self, we have an accustom to define ourselves in an incorrect way that we have to purify ourselves from. That demonstrates itself through random thoughts and fantasies. That also distracts us from our meaningful goals and diminishes our choice of goals. But that sounds terrible. How is that a caring and intelligent universe? That sounds awful. Well, the way in which this is emanated, we can understand through the dialectic. A definition of our goals. Demonstration of our false definition of ourselves. So you could say this is a definition, demonstration. The way it distracts us from our meaningful goals, the drama is the division. And of course, how does it finish off? Our goals are either unreached or crappy. So we can understand the unfolding according to the dialectic, which means we can go through a reversion through the dialectic. So long as we apply the logos and dialectic to it, we can benefit. Yes. Yes. So, this is the significance of having someone who is light years ahead of us, like Pierre or Socrates. We can reflect. We can use it to reflect our current understanding. How far did we get on our own? And also, two things. Can it confirm? Like dreams will confirm whether or not you're on the right track. Daemon will confirm, but it can also guide you away from where you're missing the mark. Right. So in the chat, everything I've seen in history, Plato touches it, or it can be encompassed within Platonism. That's the significance, right? We've talked about earlier how if you have the logos, if you realize that there's this dialectic level, order, hierarchy, that there is therefore a development, a purifying from your problems. If there is this hierarchy that's understandable, dianoia, knowable, nousia, through direct intuitive apprehension, noesis, then that means that this ladder applies to everything, including spiritual traditions. Whoops, should be on here. If you realize that there is this logos that emanates through everything, then that means that there are levels, there's an order, there's a hierarchy. That means that we can share in it, which means we can go through our own development. And there's a purifying from our problems if we can go up this hierarchical ladder of the logos. That shows us that reality in the logos is understandable. Dianoia is the Greek word. Nousia means knowable. You can directly apprehend it. You can confirm it through the mystic experience. Or mystic experience sounds like you're adding something to you, but a better word is purifying yourself from the ignorance. Purifying yourself from the ignorance of the self, you can know it directly. And that direct intuitive apprehension is called noesis. If that is through everything, as that quote from Grimes says, then that means it also applies to spiritual traditions. Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, Sufism, relativism, nihilism. It also refers to, that's thinking traditions. Also states of mind. Feeling depressed when you're nihilist, feeling bored if you're just a physicalist, feeling lonely if you think everything's relative, and so on and so on. Ultimate experience, nirvana. So that's the significance of the logos. So in response to the chat saying everything can be subsumed within Platonism. Well, of course, because Platonism is the logos. And the logos can apply to anything. Everything. So, we were in the text. There is a thing that goes through all of them. Absolutely. And that thing is... This we're talking about here. Our choice of goals, the problems we face, the daydreams or fantasies we have, and the dreams that visit us in our sleep. Each and every one of them are like doorways into the richest source of insights into our life. We've been talking about using the logos to open that door. The logos and the dialectic. What we discover through these insights is that the mind itself provides ample evidence of its own goodness and intelligibility. That's a funny word. That means you're able to know it. It means understandable, rational, but also graspable when you're able to pull off this stunt of separating yourself from the body that Socrates has been helping us to do. A demonstration of these claims is essential. The grounds for verification must be clear, and the understanding that leads to the realization that the mind is beneficent and intelligible, not just knowable, but caring for us, will be set out clearly. Therefore, we will demonstrate that the problems we should have justice. We're not being tortured. The unfolding through the logos and the dialectic that cause our problems, our distractions, our fantasies, our fate, can also be solved by applying the logos. We're not left out in the lurch. Like the metaphysics to hit Judaism, Islam. Right. And And that's a fun thing to do. Actually, that's a really beneficial thing to do, is to document the presence and absence of the logos, in the different spiritual traditions, especially the ones that are common nowadays. Why did we lose it? Why did we fall away from where Socrates was 2,000 years ago? What were those historically? Were there any turning points? Just like in midwifery, we go to the turning point where we learnt the path of logos. Was there a historical turning point at certain parts? And if you document them, can we apply the logos to them to see where we went wrong and what we could have done differently? In which case, can we... So all we're saying is, from the chat, this use of the dialectic of the emanation and the reversion to gain benefit from our distractions, random thoughts, fantasies, and dreams, you could also say, applies to history. So too can you look at our historic human development and see the presence and absence of the logos. And also recognize key turning points, key turning points, such that we can ousia or reflect upon them with logos or understanding, capital U. Why? So we can which one? This one. So we can benefit. Right. Death to all philosophers, and then running to Syria. Yes, Emperor Justinian in 1539 something. Emperor Justinian. So yes, so that same unfolding and returning of the logos to benefit can be applied to human historical development. That was a good insight from the chat. This one too. Okay, back to this quote. Demonstration of these claims is essential. The grounds for verification must be clear, and the understanding that leads to the realization, this whole understanding that leads to realization reflects what we've been seeing in Socrates. The kind of perfecting of accurate, clear, detailed, repetitive, with our friends, understanding is a purification that leads to a realization or insight. The divine self opens the gates. The mind is beneficent and intelligible. So he'll set this out in the book. Therefore, we will demonstrate that the problems we should have, justice, and their solution is in our highest interest. And with the freedom from these problems, we can function on a higher and more personally significant level of existence. This is what we're talking about in the Phaedo. Only this addresses the cause of the problems we have and seeing that we should have them, whereas Socrates what's the word? He does the on steroids version. He does the just jump out. If the problems are tied to our false association with the body, and this act of separating the soul from the body kind of pushes you out of them, it diminishes the problem significantly, because you realize, well, if I grew up thinking that I was rubbish, and I am as a soul connected to the soul of all beings, obviously I'm not rubbish, because it's the one soul, or I'm out of body. Of course I'm not a rubbish because I can't play football. Clearly being out of the body is much more real, so I don't care if I play football, even if my dad put me down. So these experiences that Socrates is outlining that will help us separate from our ignorance, but also help us do philosophy better with less distractions and less pouring in of the pains and desires and fears and stuff, gives us temporary alleviation from our problems and greatly diminishes them, but it doesn't fully remove them. That's why you also have to have this book here, because you have Socrates alluding to dreams and alluding to midwifery and talking about it, but for whatever reason in Plato you don't have the outlining of how to specifically remove the cause of the problems through the dialectic as you do in this book. Somehow perhaps Plato didn't quite reach the level of midwifery that Socrates does. That's why Socrates talks about it. That's why Socrates talks about his dreams. That's why Socrates is spoken of as talking not just to philosophers like Plato does, but to housewives and blacksmiths and regular folk, and having conversations in which they're brought into tears. This is the sort of thing that happens when you surface the pathologos cause of that false belief. So there's a lot of evidence to say that Socrates could do this, but for whatever reason, Plato didn't write a book about it. So they go together. This application of the logos to removing your pathologos, as well as Socrates' perfection of the logos and purifying through the experience of the soul out of the body, they both go hand in hand. We will demonstrate the problems we should have, and their solution is in our highest interest, and with the freedom from these problems, we can function on a higher and more personally significant level of existence, just like Socrates is saying when we separate the soul from the body. We will define the nature of man's problems in a new way, and describe that the problems are what these problems are like, and we will trace their origins to things we learned and discover why we believe them and accepted them as true. We have identified and called the pathologos those false beliefs that are the source of a certain class of our problems, because these beliefs are sick or false. Thus, the pathologos is a false belief one has been learned but not taught. It is a belief that has been accepted as true about oneself and one's reality, and since it is irreconcilable with the attainment of one's highest goals that we're talking about in the Phaedo, it is the cause of much of the chaos experienced in our life. The calamities pouring in to distract us from philosophy. A little less about things that make me happy. Seeing people like reflection and water too. Right, yes. So we talked about how this is a reflection from a higher level of reality into a lower one. All right. The cause of our problems is the appearance of these things, the appearance of truth and beauty and stuff. So we recognize that, especially when people act in our life in a way that lacks intelligence, will, mind, understanding, and so forth, we can realize that they are themselves a reflection of the cause of their problem that appeared to be those things. So humans are reflecting their own problem in their own life. They are reflecting the implications of their false belief about the nature of self and reality, caused by someone who looked like they were self-being, looked like they were self-justice, looked like they were beauty itself, looked like they were goodness, looked like they were caring, looked like they were wise, looked like they were strong. All of those things we attributed to self-being in the fourth dimension, their reflection into the third caused people to reflect themselves into the second. So this reflection of those things into the third, someone who appeared beautiful when we were young and vulnerable and open and reliant on these people, caused us to diminish ourselves from our third dimensional reality into our second. And we're causing our problems. When we're playing out our problems, we lack our intelligence, we lack will, we lack mind, we lack understanding. We make decisions that are fundamentally wrong. We view things in a fundamentally lopsided way. Someone says something and you take it personally, but they didn't say that. You're fundamentally getting it wrong. So the reflection of the fourth dimension into the third in our pathologos origin scene causes us to move out of the third. Instead of going from the third up to the fourth, we end up going down to play out our fate. We lack all these things we need to function well. It's reflections and then reflections. I found that if I'm talking to people, some act like it's a test and aren't really talking, but someone else's words answers. But someone else's words and answers is, but not theirs. Interesting. Like the people that cross your path are a test for the sorts of things that will trigger you to go down a dimension and cause problems. As though, I guess this is the reason that we saw in this text here. We have to see why we have the problems we have, why we run into people. Oh yeah? Say more. Can you say more about that? So we say, that there's a reason why we run into these people that trigger our problems. There's a reason why we have these dreams. There's a reason why we have these random distracting thoughts that diminish us, that push us off our thing, that reflect us from a third dimension to a second dimension. So it's the fourth dimension, duty, justice, goodness, caring, reflected into the third, someone in our physical world we're physically dependent on, that has some level of intelligence and will, but not actually the fourth, that causes us to sometimes act in a two-dimensional way. We act stupidly, we act blindly, we fundamentally get it wrong, we project. And of course, we have a question, being philosophers, we always try and push it to the highest. We push the implications to highest. What is, if this is these things, what is that a reflection of in the 5D world? What's the fifth dimension? And then what's the sixth dimension? And is there a seventh? Not sure. So these are questions we take with us. These are the best kinds of questions. All right, let's finish this quote. It is a belief that has been accepted as true about oneself and one's reality. It's irreconcilable with the attainment of one's goals. It is a cause of much chaos pouring in experience in our life. Philosophical midwifery is the method for discovering the nature, origin, maintenance, transmission, and the dissolution of the pathologos. Yay. As part of our work, we set out to verify whether or not this philosophical method correlates with its implementation and follows a specific method of its dialectic. So we've been seeing, right? We've been seeing the dialectic pattern. Also to determine whether midwifery uncovers false beliefs or the pathologos is said to be the root cause of the problem, and whether supporting themes of the pathologos are contributing causes to the problem, both in regards to themselves and as they interrelate with other supporting themes, right? So we can see this reflected in what we've been looking for in the mythology that we've been doing. Are we seeing repeating themes? Are we seeing supporting themes? Are there themes that are supporting the logos represented in the mythology of Socrates with his chains and separating from the body at the end of his life, and the other characters around him. The myth of Theseus, the boat purifying itself, supporting themes. So we're seeing what can be played out as supporting themes in the Logos has also its correlate reflected in the Pathologos. Supporting the creature part. Can you say more about that? Got Homer. So, yes, and by the way, Homer is a good way of mythologizing the method of philosophical midwifery, specifically in the tale about Achilles in the Iliad. So, also to determine whether midwifery services psychological states and effective or emotionalized behavior as predicted. Does it follow a predictable path? Both our state of mind and our resulting behavior from that state of mind. Further, considering we're talking about the state of mind of separating the soul from the body and our resulting behavior, can we participate greater in the Logos, in the Phaedo? Then the scores found with the supporting themes can be compared with those measuring the emotionalized behavior of a whole dialogue. So this points to the fact that this is an empirically verified system of psychotherapy. I think it's the only one that has been empirically verified with such scores of emotionalized behavior and resulting emotionalized behavior and states of mind. It's the only form of psychotherapy that's been proven to work empirically, as far as I'm aware. And then and of course, I mean, if we're discovering that everything follows the Logos, and this is just the implication of the Logos and the dialectic to problems, of course there'd only be one method. It's like, of course there's only one place to put your spark plug in your motor. That's just the way it is for everything. Of course there's only one way to, I don't know, add 2 and 2 when you're doing math or building a house or flying a plane and so on and so on and so on. Right, so you can recognize a false anxiety coming up, but you recognize it's not you. It has its own power. It's like a psychic parasite, as it's called. And to determine the basis upon which midwifery prescribes and evaluates its dialogue sessions. So you repeat, just like we said, we repeatedly go back to the Logos of remembering Socrates, says Phaedo. We continually go back to the Logos of the self, says Socrates and Phaedo. In a similar way, we repeatedly go back to the dialogue sessions in midwifery to see the truth. There's something about the human condition that we repeat and accustom ourselves to doing this, just like we accustom ourselves to separate the soul from the body. Right. So we have a pure text from the chat about the Phaedo and its copy in the, or the copy or imitation we play out in our Pathologos. And you apply the dialectic to both. Our conclusion to our validation study was found to reject the okay, this is the conclusion of the empirical study on this. This isn't just woo-woo, it's empirically or scientifically verified, so don't you worry. I say that because I myself I want understanding and reason. I want rationality. I want truth. I don't want delusion. So our conclusion to our validation study, there we go, was found to reject the long-standing belief held in psychology, cultural belief, cultural myth, that a purely rational psychotherapy or a purely rational cognitive method in principle is incapable of raising significant levels of emotionalized behavior and of being empirically verified. We have a culture in psychotherapy, a mythology that you can't solve human problems empirically like not empirically, but in a way that can be empirically verified using purely rational, the logos. We included chapters that presented 2 case studies, a comparative study of the dialectic, bing, 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 dialectic.
Wow.
Our relationship of midwifery to the Platonic tradition.
Wow.
The evolution of consciousness.
Wow.
The pathologos likeness and recursive algorithms and chaos theory. Okay, that's pretty cool too. Like that's modern physics theory.
Wow.
Finding a model of the pathologos in field theory, another modern scientific theory.
Wow.
And its function in daydreams.
Wow.
A chapter is devoted to comparing midwifery with the theories of present-day psychotherapies and recognized cognitive therapies.
Wow.
So, complete as hell. But we started by this. It's entirely possible to verify for oneself we are part of a caring and intelligible universe. Verification is a kind of proof, since it is a way of understanding that is based upon a realization that our mind constantly communicates to us and for our benefit. Owen?
Wow. Wow.
That's what we want to look for. So, not only is it possible, that points out that there's, a heck of a lot of scientific verification as well. Even though it goes beyond the physical, it is consistent with field theory, chaos theory, whatever the other stuff was. Someone in quantum physics is recognizing it as well. I can't remember his name. What was it? Field theory. Evolutionary theory fits with that as well. The chapter on evolutionary theory. Field theory, algorithms, chaos theory. Oh yeah, the evolution of consciousness. Yeah, and the Platonic tradition, so. And verified in case studies. Yada, yada, yada. It's all there. Okay. Right, and so, but the extent and the scope of that verification and alignment with modern scientific discoveries and theories gives you a reason to trust it. In the chat, yeah, the trust can be the hard part at the start. Trust that we live in an understandable and caring world. Through the dialectic, we can unpack that providence. But, I mean, there's a lot of case studies and empirical verification, and I've seen the graphs. It's over my head, but so there's good reason to trust it. And of course, Socrates is talking about it too, so trust this guy. But he says we repeat this, and not only do we believe it and repeat it, but we have to verify it for ourselves. Meaning, understanding, dianoia. Yeah. Although, so in the chat, it's good if it does no harm. However, there are counterattacks. Every insight or every truth is there's a counterattack to it. Meaning, the pathologos has that parasitic nature and will try and fight against your insights. So that's the body falling in and presenting itself in a clamor and driving us out of our mind. So what does that mean? How could our physical desires and fears and passions and illusions drive us out of our mind? We can recognize this very much as the pathologos. The counterattack from our false idea of the self, or the pathologos, drives us out of our minds, especially when we're reaching a point of insight, especially an insight that would, oh, you found out about that lately in the chat. Yeah, well, I hope it wasn't too bad, or I hope it was bad and you're able to get through it. You're able to recognize that it was just a counterattack. Right. Yes, and if we don't go through that process of removing or purifying ourselves, we end up doing unto others what was done unto us. Why? Because we think it's good. Of course, we want to do what's best and if this is the image of what's good, then this becomes our model of justice, our model of excellence. We want to impress a girl, our model of beauty. We want to pick a girl to date, well, that becomes our model of beauty, and good luck in that relationship. So, what we are trying to do in the Phaedo is find the actual model of paradigm and experience it. And we can recognize that when we get close to it, the pathologos comes pouring in and drives us out of our mind. That's the pathologos counterattack. So be aware of it. Hopefully you're in a place where you can continue to reflect and have dialogues with other people in this game. Share your thoughts, share your insights. Even in this channel, if you want to share. It's putting logos on it can be helpful. So, let's nail down this. Purification definition. Demonstration to separate the soul as far as possible from the body. Yeah. Purification. Demonstration. That's the definition. Demonstration to separate the soul from the body as far as possible. Custom ourselves to division. So this is definition, demonstration, division. Put those parts. Collect the soul together from all quarters. 1. 2. Collect the self by self out of the body. Collect yourself together out of the body. 3. Dwell alone by self as far as you are able. 4. Both now and in the future. It's a nice 4 there. So we have synthesis, analysis. So the last step should be taking all of those divisions, synthesizing them together. That's the synthesis part. And then applying it back to the start. So that's the synthesis, brings all these together, and then analysis brings it back to the start. What's that? Ousia. Conversion upon itself. So we're looking for that in the text. Start to see the poets. So, collect yourself together, dwell alone as far as you're able, both now and the future. Okay. Now what follows? Being liberated from, as it were, the chains of the body. So this would be the synthesis. All of those things allow you to do what? Liberate from the chains of the body. By all means. And is it not the case that this liberation and separation of the soul from the body is indeed called death? Okay, so that liberation is the synthesis, mythologized by the chains, and then taking it back to the start. This liberation and separation of the soul from the body is indeed called death. So liberation, separation of the soul from the body. So write that down. Liberation. Liberation. Liberation from chains of the body. This liberation and separation of the soul from the body. Separation of soul from body. So liberation and separation, and that's our synthesis of everything, and we call it death. So As it's a dialectic, we take that back to the start. We call it death. What's the purification? Death. Liberation, separation, we call death. That's the purification. What's the purification? Liberation, separation, we call death. So that activity allows us a new, clearer insight into the subject that we can turn about and understand the subject. That's the significance of the dialectic. So we can actually further synthesize that. So we say liberation and separation of soul from body call death. This is what a philosopher calls death. So we've defined this term death. And so having gone through this dialectic, you can recognize that more and more. That's the significance of the dialectic. We've got all these parts, and now we've got liberation and separation called death. 1, 2, 3. Take those 3, understand that's what purification is. So we can understand purification as death, and death is purification according to this. Yeah, makes sense. So let's read ahead a little bit in anticipation of what's to come. Then only those who practice philosophy in the right way, or we've seen this before, as we said, are indeed most eager to liberate the self, and this liberation and separation of the soul from the body is the self-exercise study of the philosophers. Wow, so it has come to light. So we can add to this. We call it death, and also the self-study the self-study and exercise of the philosophers.
Wow. Wow.
So it has come to light. Is it not the case then, as I said in the beginning, that it would be absurd for a brave to prepare himself in life as close as possible to being dead, and live in this way? Oh, you can live being dead? Interesting. And when this self comes to be perturbed, spent his whole life living in this way. Wouldn't it make sense wouldn't it be absurd if he was perturbed? How could it not? Accordingly then, O Simmias, in reality, those who practice philosophy correctly are studying to die, and selves fear death least of all human beings.
Wow.
But consider it from this perspective. There's a long bit here, so maybe we should leave it there. On that insight, on that bombshell. Those who practice philosophy correctly are studying to die and fear death least. What is death? Yeah, Socrates, the original zombie or undead. What is death? Purification. Liberation and separation of the soul from the body, which is the self-study and exercise of the philosophers. That was some good work. That was some good questions. Thank you for the participation, the sharing. That's not participation because that's a language of the physical. That's taking a part. Where's our pizza? Pizza. You take a part of a pizza and there's less to go around, but you share in the logos. Went through that last time. So thank you for sharing. Why put you in a cave and then you'd come out of it? Yes, that's our question. If we are returning to our soul in itself, separate from the body, why come into the body to begin with? What the heck was the point? That's a good question. That's one we're going to take with us. I encourage you to take that question with you. Is there any significance in the logos, considering we had to go through the logos to recognize that our purification and the study and exercise of the philosopher is the liberation and separation of the soul from the body? We had to go through the dialectic to see that. And also the exercise. So what you can try tonight, gather your soul together from all quarters, collect yourself by self out of the body, dwell alone by self as far as able, both now and the future, and finally come back and tell us about how it went. I hope you do so, and if you do, thank you, and thank you for joining me on this adventure, and thank you for joining me in the chat.